Mary had a little lamb.
The fourth, we believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It all started.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
It all started with the Russia witch hunt, right? Then the Inspector General's shocking report proved that the Obama FBI obtained secret warrants to spy on my campaign based on a phony foreign dossier of debunked smears paid for by crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC. The FBI failed to disclose the nature of the political hit job to the FISA court. They hid it. They deceived it, and they lied. The dossier was written by a discredited foreign agent who, quote, desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being the United States president. What's this? Folks, they spied on our campaign, okay? They spied. Never happened before in the history of our country. And we're really wise to it. We're wise to it. The Inspector General found that the FBI's spying application contained 17 errors and omissions commonly known as lies and deceit. When the FBI, and you have great people in the FBI, but not in leadership. You have not good people in leadership you haven't had. When the FBI uncovered evidence showing that we did absolutely nothing wrong, which was right at the beginning. They hid that exonerating. You know that. They hid it. They hid it so nobody could see it, so they could keep this hoax going on for 2 years.
Okay, none of that is true. Just thought I would mention that. No one spied on the Trump campaign. There was one FISA warrant for surveillance. That was against Carter Page, and that FISA warrant wasn't even applied for until after Carter Page left the Trump campaign. There. How hard is that, everybody? How difficult is that to wrap your brain around? There were lawyers, low-level lawyers, who were doing various parts of the third renewal of the Carter Page FISA surveillance warrant with the secret court, which, in my opinion, should not exist. America does not have secret courts. So that's, by the way, where Jonathan Turley and I became friends. You know, you hear me say Jonathan Turley is a friend of the show, and he is. Because Jonathan Turley and I both agree that there should not be secret courts in the United States of America, period, end of story. Okay? But there is. And it's horrible. But a low-level lawyer inside the Justice Department made an application for the third renewal of a surveillance warrant, the one that was issued on anybody that had anything to do with the Trump campaign in January of 2017 after Trump was president of the United States. And that particular application had an omission about something, and we don't know what it was, that said Carter Page should not be issued, there should not be continuing surveillance on Carter Page. I have no idea what he left out. It was a guy. He's been referred for a criminal prosecution for doing such a bad job on the third renewal. But the timeline for the crazy people doesn't work. Carter Page left the Trump campaign in September of 2016. The first FISA application for surveillance on Carter Page, by the way, was in 2014. Okay, they had looked into Carter Page previously, the FBI did. That said, the first warrant for surveillance of Carter Page post-Trump campaign was October 21st, 2016. Carter Page left the Trump campaign in September of 2016. So nobody in the Trump campaign was surveilled. That's just a fact. So here's Lindsey Graham sounding like he's got an aha moment, But I want you to listen to the date. The date. The date, Lindsey Graham, is so, his blood is boiling. His hair is on fire. He's just beside himself with this terrible, terrible, law breaking that's going on. The date he's referring to by his own mouth is January of 2017. Trump's already president. Carter Page, there is no Trump campaign, number one. Number two, Carter Page is long gone. Okay?
What I want you to know is that in January 2017, the whole foundation for surveilling Carter Page collapses. Exculpatory information is ignored. They lie to the court about what the interview was all about. Is that a fair summary so far about the January 2017?
They certainly misled. It was misleading to the court.
Okay, fair enough. And in January, about 6 months later, when they find more information that could be helpful to Mr. Page, they lie about it. Do you feel like Mr. Page was treated fairly by the Department of Justice and the FBI?
I don't think the Department of Justice fairly treated these FISAs, and he was on the receiving end of the FISA.
Okay, that's bad. It's very bad. And the person that did that is going to be in a lot of trouble. However, that is not the Trump campaign. There was only one FISA warrant ever issued for surveillance. It was against Carter Page, and it wasn't when Carter Page was part of the Trump campaign. It was after he left. So that means Bill Barr is a freaking liar. That means that everybody that is so outraged right now about the bad application for the third renewal of Carter Page surveillance warrant is they're faux outraged, is what I'm saying. They're faux outraged. If you really wanted to, talk about it, you got to go back to 2002 when all these warrants were applied for against Clinton. And they lied repeatedly to the FISA court, which is why we were talking about a FISA court because of George W. Bush. And I don't think there ought to be a secret court in this country. I just don't see how this country can support a secret court. But here's Dick Durbin today showing you that the applications to FISA courts have been, let's say, not properly filed many, many, many times.
I've been joining Senator Leahy and Senator Lee for years talking about this FISA court.
Yeah.
And we now have an ample record here in this case and in a lot of others. 2002, the FISA court identified more than 75 cases in which it was misled by the FBI. Internal FBI review in 2006, dozens of inaccuracies provided to the FISA court. The list goes on and on. So let's have a fulsome conversation after this about the future of the FISA court and the representations that are made to it. Let me try, if I can, Mr. Horowitz, thank you and your team for being here, to go through a few points. The chairman gave an uncharacteristic, flowery, heated opening that went on for some 40 minutes.
Oh, my God.
And produced a lengthy record of emails from Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, which repeatedly demonstrated statements of hostility toward candidate Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He went on to say these were the people in charge. When I read your summary of your findings, you didn't find either of them to be in charge, did you?
On this investigation, we did not.
Okay. When it comes to expletives, you also, on page 339 of your report, found some agents at the FBI who had an exactly opposite political viewpoint. Correct. And were very positive toward candidate Trump and very open in their use of expletives to demonstrate that.
Yeah. And those individuals, to be clear, were not part of the Crossfire Hurricane team, but were in a different field office interacting with the Crossfire Hurricane team.
And I hope we can all concede the point. We don't believe anyone in this capacity, this delicate capacity with life-changing decision-making every single day, should be so politically biased as to call into question their values and their character.
That's correct, and I made this point last year when this issue came up. Individuals at the Justice Department and the FBI are allowed to have their political views.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
It's a big deal to use the law enforcement and the intelligence resources of the United States government to investigate a campaign of, especially an opposing party. It was clear that the dossier was a sham. So what happens? What happens at that point? They don't tell the court, and they continue to get FISA warrants based on that dossier. And I don't know what the motivations were, and I'm not saying they were improper motivations, but I think it's premature to rule definitively there wasn't.
He is such a puppet of, Donald Trump. It's unbelievable. I think that he's waiting for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to have some sort of a fate met, and he would like to be the next Supreme Court justice. It's the only explanation I can come up with for why he's doing this. The Trump campaign was never spied on. Everybody needs to wrap their brain around that particular fact. Never spied on. What was opened was a counterintelligence investigation into Russia. Why did they open a counterintelligence investigation into Russia? Why did the FBI open a counterintelligence investigation into Russia's activities in the 2016 election? Well, by the time the FBI, July 31st of 2016, opened up an investigation, a counterintelligence investigation into Russia, what they had was Russia had hacked and already disseminated through WikiLeaks the stolen emails. That had already happened. Already, an Australian diplomat had gone to the FBI, had gone to the American government, and reported that 7 weeks earlier, a man named George Papadopoulos was drunk with this Australian ambassador and told him that Russia was going to hack and get dirt on Hillary Clinton. 7 weeks before the FBI knew there was hacking, Papadopoulos told this to the Australian diplomat. After the hacking occurred, and after the dumping of the initial round of emails, that is when the Australian diplomat contacted the United States and said, it's weird, but 7 weeks ago, I had this, very whiny lunch with this guy, George Papadopoulos, who claims he works for the Trump campaign, and he knew that Russia was hacking and that they were going to disseminate dirt on Hillary Clinton. Also, by the time they opened a counterintelligence investigation into Russia, the FBI knew that Carter Page had gone back and forth to Russia, but he had left the campaign. And he went to, Russia again. Michael Flynn was involved with the RT dinner, which was shown on TV. Everybody could see it. You didn't need any surveillance to see Michael Flynn sitting at a table with Vladimir Putin and Jill Stein. And of course, Manafort had joined the campaign, and Manafort had massive contacts with Russia and Oleg Deripaska, and had given polling. He was giving polling data to Russian intelligence. Manafort's business partner, Konstantin Kilimnik, was a Russian intelligence officer. There had been a Trump Tower meeting with Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort and Don Jr. with Natalia Veselnitskaya, who was involved in the Prevazon settlement over the killing of Sergei Magnitsky by the Russians in prison. Trump Tower was secretly being negotiated with Moscow. And Trump was on the campaign trail saying he had no business in Moscow. Trump stood on a stage and said, Russia, if you're listening. And Roger Stone was communicating with WikiLeaks. So they wanted to understand whether or not Russia had any American contacts and how they were pulling off this amazing feat of getting Hillary Clinton's emails, getting dirt on Hillary Clinton, disseminating it through WikiLeaks. So they opened an investigation into Russia. They did not look at the Trump campaign until Donald Trump became the president. And Donald Trump fired James Comey. And that's when we got a special prosecutor. And that's when the Trump campaign and the participants in it finally got looked at. And what did that produce? That produced 37 indictments, some of which we can't try because they were on Russian intelligence officers. And Manafort went to prison for what was already an open investigation into money laundering and tax evasion. That when Manafort joined the Trump campaign, he was already being investigated by the FBI for money laundering and for tax evasion. Michael Cohen lied during that investigation, and he went to jail for campaign finance violations and lying about it. Michael Flynn pled guilty, to lying to the FBI during that particular investigation. Now, there's still one more person missing from prosecution, and that's Rudy Giuliani. And, I got to give Patrick Leahy some props here, because Patrick Leahy and I are the only people, it seems, in this entire United States of America who are interested in Rudy Giuliani and the very pro-Trumplandia New York FBI field office, where Rudy Giuliani said he was talking to active agents and knew that they had taken Huma Abedin and what's his name? Anthony Weiner's laptop. And that on that computer, there were 50,000 emails that had Hillary Clinton's name on them. Now, it turned out in the end that they were all copies of things the FBI had already seen. But Rudy Giuliani was on television, and he was screaming about an October surprise, right? An October surprise in October. And he said, we got one more thing up our sleeve, and it's going to be big, and even the liberal pollsters are going to have to admit that this is going to change the results of the election, da-da-da-da-da, right? And he was on Lars Larson's radio show saying, well, I talked to some active agents inside the New York field office, and they are livid because Comey closed the email investigation, and we still have information coming about the email, and that we still have it coming, right? And the only two people in the world that seem to be interested in the pro-Trump FBI contingency, and obviously the testimony of Michael Horowitz and the IG report shows, some people were anti-Trump in the FBI, and a lot of people were very pro-Trump in the FBI. And that doesn't mean jack, as long as it doesn't interfere with the execution of their official duties. No one should care what their political persuasion is and how they vote. But these New York officers, they were violating the law and giving Rudy Giuliani inside FBI information. And only Patrick Leahy is interested in the result of that investigation, which we have never seen.
Clear. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Rudy Giuliani and others appear to receive highly sensitive leaks from the New York FBI field office. Leaks that likely contributed to Director Comey's public announcement that he was reopening the Clinton investigation just days before the election. I asked then Director Comey about these leaks. He said he was investigating. Now, we know the number of these leaks to Mr. Giuliani, which he then ran to the cameras and actually bragged about talking about. What can you tell us about the New York field office's leaks to Rudolph Giuliani and others?
So as we noted publicly last year in our report, we were very concerned about that. We put in the appendix charts showing all the different contacts.
Oh, my God.
And subsequent to that report, and this continues to this day, we are investigating those contacts. We've issued a couple of public summaries so far about people we found violated FBI policy. We have other investigations ongoing that when we conclude it, we will also post summaries of. It's what's proving to be very hard is to prove the actual substance of the communications between the agents and the reporters or the individuals, as you might guess. But we can prove the contacts, and under FBI policy, you need authorization if you're going to disclose information and have certain contacts.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there is still, all these years later, this happened in 2016 in October. Rudy Giuliani went on Fox News and sat there with Martha McCallum and said they had some stuff up their sleeve. He went on Lars Larson's show on October 26th and said that they had an October surprise. And it was, he told Lars Larson that he was talking to active New York field office FBI agents. And there, in the Horowitz report, there are multiple text messages from all different kinds of FBI officials, officers, whatever your agents, that some of them were pro-Trump and they're swearing and cursing, and some of them were anti-Trump and they're swearing and cursing. And yet no one in the Trump campaign was ever surveilled. Carter Page was the only FISA warrant that was ever issued for surveillance. And that didn't happen until after he left the Trump campaign. And the reason why is because the FBI had opened up an investigation into Carter Page previously in 2014. In 2014, they suspected him of being Russian intelligence. So there you have it. That's the whole thing. And they're going to take up a whole day today to question him about something he said in like less than a minute.
We reviewed Department and FBI policies and concluded that Assistant Director Priestap's exercise of discretion in opening the investigation was in compliance with those policies. We also reviewed, as we detail in the report, the emails, text messages, and other documents of those involved in that decision, and particularly Mr. Priestap's, and we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that indicated political bias or improper motivation influencing his decision to open the investigation. While the information in the FBI's possession at the time was limited, in light of the low threshold established by Department and FBI predication policy, which, by the way, is not a legal requirement, but rather a prudential one in the FBI and Department policies, we found that Crossfire Hurricane was open for an authorized investigative purpose and with sufficient factual predication.
Less than a minute. Authorized purpose, sufficient predication. And what was that? I told you exactly what it was. Russia had hacked and Wiki released. The Australian ambassador, after that happened, said to the United States, oh my God, 7 weeks ago, I met with this guy, George Papadopoulos, and he was telling me that he met with this professor in Italy who was a Russian intelligence operative who told him Russia's going to hack and they got dirt on Hillary Clinton. And then it happened. So he told the United States. Page, Flynn, Manafort, they all had Russian contacts. Okay? Manafort's business partner was a known Russian intelligence asset, Konstantin Kilimnik. Trump Tower was being secretly negotiated, and Trump Tower in New York, they had a meeting with Russian, Natalia Veselnitskaya, right? Carter Page is talking to Kislyak this whole time, right back and forth. And Manafort's giving polling data to Oleg Deripaska, a guy who got sanctioned by the United States of America, and then Trump wanted to remove those sanctions. Congress had to take a vote to force Donald Trump to enforce those sanctions, but Congress was unsuccessful. Trump stands on the stage. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you can find the other emails. And Roger Stone is coordinating with WikiLeaks. I mean, yes, they had predication. They had a reasonable, so what is wrong with Bill Barr? I mean, why is he doing this?
It's a big deal to use the law enforcement and the intelligence resources of the United States government to investigate a campaign of, especially an opposing.
First of all, they did not investigate the Trump campaign. No one investigated Donald Trump or his campaign until he fired James Comey and a special counsel was appointed, Bob Mueller. That's it. Why is he doing this?
They not only didn't tell the court that what they had been relying on was completely, rubbish. They actually started putting in things to bolster the Steele report. These irregularities, these misstatements, these omissions were not satisfactorily explained. And I think that leaves open the possibility to infer bad faith.
And again, the Inspector General did not infer bad faith, specifically found no evidence of political bias there. And what's really remarkable, Senator, is what we now hear from the FBI Director, Christopher Wray, who finds himself in a pickle because he seems to agree with the Inspector General report. Listen.
The Inspector General did not find that political bias or improper motivations impacted the decision to open the Russia interference investigation.
What do you make of this apparent rift now between the FBI Director and the Attorney General and the President of the United States?
This rift is absolutely unprecedented in a case of this magnitude. The Director of the FBI is not merely defending his agency, he is stating the truth that whatever the errors or omissions in seeking the warrants for electronic surveillance were not the result of bad faith, not anti-Trump animus or bias. And the Attorney General, who theoretically is his boss, is perpetuating this right-wing conspiracy theory about bad faith, anti-Trump animus, and in fact impugning the integrity of the entire FBI and law enforcement. That is striking, and it's a real disservice to law enforcement. But the important point here is the results. The Attorney General of the United States is saying that the Russian investigation was a bogus narrative. He is helping to support the idea that Ukraine, not Russia, attacked the United States. That leads to complacency, a threat to national security. And that's why today, Mr. Horowitz has to incontrovertibly, clearly, explicitly rebut and debunk this kind of conspiracy theory.
Which he did. And they're going to waste a whole day on this.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I see you looking at me. Okay, one more time. Michael Horowitz testifies. One more time.
So your report states that you didn't find documentary or testimonial evidence that political bias or improper motivation played a role.
That's correct.
Thank you. And you didn't find a deep state conspiracy against candidate or President Trump.
So, as to the opening, we found no bias, no testimonial documentary evidence on that.
And no rationale for a deep state that...
We looked at Mr. Priestap, as I noted, was the decision maker, and we did not find any evidence in his emails or texts of having engaged in any bias or having any bias.
FBI Director Wray provided a written response to your report, accepting all of your findings. And these include the key finding that there was, quote, an authorized purpose and actual factual predication for the investigation. By contrast, Attorney General Barr expressed his doubt about the legitimacy of the FBI's investigation in press statements. Did Attorney General Barr provide any evidence that caused you to alter this key finding that the FBI investigation had an adequate predicate?
No, we stand by our finding.
Thank you. During your investigation, Attorney General Barr stated his belief that, quote, spying on the Trump campaign did occur, end quote. And as you said, your investigation found no evidence that the FBI placed any confidential source within the Trump campaign or tasked any confidential source to report on the Trump campaign. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
And further, no evidence that political bias or improper motivations influenced the decision to use confidential sources as part of the investigation.
That's correct.
Did your office ask Attorney General Barr and U.S. Attorney John Durham to share whatever evidence they had that might be relevant to your investigation?
We asked Mr. Durham to do that.
And what about Attorney General Barr?
And Attorney General Barr.
Thank you. So nothing they could provide altered your office's conclusion that the FBI did not place spies in the Trump campaign?
None of the discussions changed our findings here.
Fatality.
Bye-bye, conspiracy theory. On to the next one. And you know what? This is exactly how they do it. This is exactly what the Trump campaign does. This is exactly what the Trump administration does. This is exactly what Trump does. Trump stakes out a claim. Oh, you'll see the IG report. Horowitz, he's going to show you that Page and Strzok, that they somehow, they weren't even in charge of anything, but okay, that they spied on my, you're going to see. So Devin Nunes puts out a report. It lays there like nothing. Okay, so now it's on to the IG Horowitz report. That's going to be a bombshell. That's going to be about nothing. Now, everybody's got to wait for Durham. It's going to be Durham's report. That's going to be, and you know what they're going to do with Durham? The same thing they did with the Hillary Clinton email investigation, okay? Barr is going to sit there and never publish the Durham report until 5 seconds before the election. And if they could find anything at all about this lawyer that, on the third renewal of the Carter, if they could find anything, they could blow, they'll release it, or they will never release it, and you will never hear another word about it. This is what Donald Trump does. This is what he does. Oh, you're gonna the same. He does it. North Korea, fire and fury. He stakes a claim, right? He sits there and he says, "Fire and fury. We're gonna have a nuclear war with North Korea, and I should get the Nobel Prize because I'm gonna stop the nuclear war." And then he goes and he meets and he decides I'm in love with him and he loves me. And look, see, I've done stuff that nobody else could do. And he's still launching missiles from the same damn site. You know what I mean? It's just so unbelievable. The propaganda. He does it over and over. And I have to tell you, last night was probably the most desperate and deranged I have ever heard him. Listen, you don't pay. Well, you do pay me. Nobody else pays me but you. Thank you. To watch this stuff. It is like it grates on your last nerve to listen to this man. He stood on a stage last night. He lied so blatantly. So it's so easy to debunk him. It's just that a lot of people won't. They just won't. Whatever he says, they start repeating. It's just so bizarre. But yes, I played you the clip where he lied about the IG report. He was not spied on. His campaign was never spied on. Had nothing to do with Strzok and Page at all, ever. Okay? And then he stood on the stage and he decided that he was going to call law enforcement in this country. I don't know how people could say he's pro-law enforcement. He loves the cops. He loves the FBI. He called them scum. It was disgusting.
And the FBI also sent multiple undercover human spies.
They did not.
To surveil and record people associated with our campaign. Look how they've hurt people. They've destroyed the lives of people that were great people, that are still great people. Their lives have been destroyed by scum. Okay, by scum.
Oh my God. And then, out of whole cloth, he just made this up.
FBI lawyer Lisa Page, so in love that she didn't know what the hell was happening, texted the head of counterintelligence, Peter Strzok, likewise, so in love he couldn't see straight. This poor guy, did I hear he needed a restraining order after this whole thing to keep him away from Lisa? That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. The fake news will never report it. But it could be true.
It could be.
No, that's what I heard. I don't know.
Some people
say. Who could believe a thing like that? No, I heard that Peter Strzok needed a restraining order to keep him away from his once lover. Ah, Lisa, I hope you miss him. Lisa, he'll never be the same.
That did not happen. And Lisa Page is now suing the government, okay? Suing the government. I don't know how people could, support this. I'm not clear on why they would support this. But this was a just made up, whole cloth lie. Some people say, I heard, that's what I heard. A president of the United States who is worthy of being the president of the United States does not stand on a stage and say gossip, okay? As you know, some people say, or I heard, or she got a restraint. They just don't do that because they have more honor, they have more control, they have more dignity, they have more character, and they have more respect for the people they're talking to who put them there. But he disrespects. I mean, I remember at the beginning, my God, when he first saw the people that were showing up to his rallies, he said, these are my people. He was so disappointed in what you looked like. And here we are. All right, Aaron in Santa Fe.
Hey, hi, Randy.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey, I love you.
I love you more.
You know what? But great. This is a person it's a 5-time draft dodger, and he doesn't divulge his taxes. And these people are like, it's like they're drinking the Kool-Aid. It's
well,
like they're
it's even worse than that. I mean, his charity was just fined $2 million, shut down the charity, and fined $2 million that he owes to, wounded warriors and other,
it's corrupt all the way across.
And his university bilked people out of $36,000, people that were trying to get ahead in life that thought maybe they could learn real estate from the master or whatever. And he had to pay $25 million for a fraud that he perpetrated on them. Why do people think he's going to change? Why don't they understand that that's all he does is perpetrate frauds on people that are trying to find a better way, a better life? Why?
Because that's how he led his whole life doing that. His father did that.
But the question
his grandfather did that.
But the question is, why do people not know that if he fooled them once, he'll fool them twice, and he'll fool them 3 times? Why don't they know that?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because, cops love Trump, and I don't understand that. I really don't.
Look, I for the life of me can't understand how he could stand on a stage last night and call law enforcement scum when he disagrees with a law enforcement effort that produced 27 indictments. Roger Stone was found guilty. Manafort's sitting in jail for 7.5 years. Michael Cohen is in jail for 3 years. Flynn, he still hasn't been sentenced, because I think he's cooperating still to this minute, but Flynn lied to the FBI, okay? I don't understand how they could support a guy who every single person around him either pled guilty to a crime or were found guilty of a crime, and their crimes had to do with perpetrating lies and a fraud on you.
Clear.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Shifty Schiff, this honest guy, makes up my statements. He said the president of Ukraine repeatedly declared that there was no pressure, but he didn't want to say that. We said, say it. Say it, you crooked bastard. Say it.
That didn't even make any sense, but all he wanted to say was Adam Schiff is a crooked bastard. I mean, that is a very strange and sick man, okay? And I just want you to know tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, Congress will begin the debate on the 2 articles of impeachment. You will hear arguments for more articles of impeachment. You will hear arguments to keep it narrowly focused because it's easy for Cult 45 members to digest. It's easy for the American people to understand. You're going to hear a debate tonight, if you choose to hear a debate tonight, at 7 o'clock. Each member gets 5 minutes on the floor to make their case for these articles of impeachment, more articles of impeachment, less articles of impeachment, censure, or whatever it is that they're about. So that happens tonight at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock will be the first considerations of articles of impeachment. It's called a markup. And we don't have a date for the vote yet. I'm expecting a vote either at the end of this week or early next week. Then it goes to the Senate. And you could just best believe Mitch McConnell will not be taking this up until after the new year at least. He won't even take up a vote on the USMCA because Nancy Pelosi ate their lunch on the USMCA deal. Okay? I mean, Donald Trump, was on the stage last night saying, oh, Nancy Pelosi, all of a sudden she's for the USMCA. No, she's for her version of the USMCA, which has very strict labor standards in it. It will bring 176,000 new jobs to the United States. It's got labor standards and pay standards for people who work on cars, make cars in Mexico. They stripped out of the trade deal a provision for Big Pharma. Big Pharma wanted a 10-year moratorium on generic drugs to protect them from, having generics of their drugs for less, and she stripped that out. So we did really good. The AFL-CIO, Richard Trumka, everybody is embracing our version of the USMCA, and Mitch McConnell doesn't even want to take a vote on it. I don't know if he doesn't like it or if he doesn't want to give the Democrats a win. I don't know what his deal is. I really don't. But I will tell you, that man last night, he was so desperately lying. He was so unhinged. And so get ready to be living in a dystopian world. Get ready to be living in a world where Bill Barr says the Trump campaign was spied on, but everybody that's investigated the Trump campaign being spied on says no. It was a counterintelligence investigation that was opened in July 31st, 2016, on Russian hacking, which produced indictable evidence of Russian hacking by Russian intelligence agents as directed by Vladimir Putin. That is what the Mueller report found. And it did not look at any behavior of anybody from Donald Trump all the way down to Junior until he fired James Comey for opening up a counterintelligence investigation into Russia. That's just plain twisted. And I will tell you that the most disgusting things that we've seen, like the Helsinki thing where Trump, totally advocated for Putin being innocent in this hacking and all that. Well, he said he didn't do it. He said it strongly. And forcefully, whatever. Donald Trump doesn't know a whole lot of words. You won't believe what's going to happen, or you won't believe what you're seeing, or never before. It's bigger than ever before. No one's ever seen anything like this. It's a disgrace. These are the same things he says over and over and over and over again without proof or evidence about what it is he's talking about. But last night was just so sick. It was so... But before we play this for you, and it's just everything he said was a lie. There was no truth at all. Mike Pompeo did something so disgusting. Donald Trump he won't have, Mr. Zelensky into the Oval Office, a man who is wanting to be part of NATO, wanting to be a corrupt-free democratic society, wanting to join the Western world and pull away from, the autocratic, corrupt Russian system, right? Meanwhile, he's occupied by Russia in Crimea and the Donbass region in the east. Oh, and by the way, here's a little factoid for you people who, like to argue with me on Twitter. But he gave the javelins. Under the terms of sale of those javelins, where those javelins have to be stored? They have to be stored in Western Ukraine. Very, very far away from the front lines. So they can't use them. Just saying. Just so you know. But Pompeo and Trump had Sergei Lavrov into the White House yesterday, and standing next to our Secretary of State, Lavrov made a statement again that Russia did not hack, and it's a baseless claim.
The wave of suspicions that has overcome Washington. We have highlighted once again that all speculations about our alleged interference in domestic processes in the United States are baseless. There are no facts that would support that. We did not see these facts. No one has given us this proof because simply it does not exist.
I mean, this is so unbelievable. And then you have the president and the attorney general and the secretary of state and Mick Mulvaney and all these people parroting this Russian propaganda that they didn't do what Ukraine did. They didn't do what Ukraine did. It is so dystopian. Everything is so bizarre with regard to what these people say using the official office of the presidency of the United States. I mean, I mean, he called Adam Schiff a crooked bastard. Okay, then he proceeded to call Maxine Waters low IQ. Then he decided that he was going to trash Representative Al Green, who, after the Mueller report, said, this president needs to go.
Low IQ, Maxine Waters. How about Green? How about Green? We've Green.
They don't even know who he is.
How about Green, where he said, we have to impeach him, because if we don't impeach him, we're not going to win the election. This is what we're dealing with. You know, we're dealing with some very bad people.
Oh, my God.
We're dealing with people that don't respect you. And by the way, you know, they talk about the elite. You're the elite. They're not the elite. You're the elite.
Okay, and then he goes into this riff about how you have better cars than they do. You have better houses than they do. You have better education than they do. I mean, seriously, dude? Are you kidding me? This is very sick and twisted, but here's another blatant lie. And we know this because yesterday, a court in West Texas, a federal judge in West Texas ruled that Donald Trump's fake declaration of an emergency on the border is exactly that. It's fake. It does not meet any of the criteria for a declaration of an emergency in the United States, and therefore, Donald Trump, and not therefore, but also, in addition, Donald Trump cannot appropriate the military funds that were appropriated by Congress for the military construction projects. He can't redirect them to his stupid border wall because only Congress has the power of the purse. Today, a federal judge in California ruled the same way. The courts have ruled against Donald Trump repeatedly, and I'll play you what he said last night.
At RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Democrat politicians more thoroughly betrayed the American people than on the issue of immigration. Far left politicians, I mean, they're fighting me on the wall. You have no idea, but we're building it and it's fine. And we have the money coming in from the military. I got from here, from there. Believe me, if I weren't a good developer, you could forget about that wall. I got here, there, bah. These people fought me, and we've started winning in court.
Oh, my God. I mean, does he think he's Pesci? Is that what it? Bing, bang, bing. You know, it's a Pesci thing here. Obviously, the guy likes mobsters. He's just so stupid. He's a bad mobster is what he is. He gets caught every 5 seconds. But he lost in court yesterday. A federal judge in West Texas found that Donald Trump cannot move money from military construction projects to the wall. The only money that Donald Trump has for border security is $1.3 billion that Congress appropriated. And that is it. And with that money, he has been refurbishing some fencing. And that is all that has happened at the border. No new fencing has been built. Zero 0 miles of new fencing, 0 miles of wall, 0 miles of anything, just replacement fencing with the 1.3. And then today in California, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration cannot use military funds for the border wall construction and that his emergency declaration is bogus. What is he telling these people? Why are they... what I don't get about Trump supporters is why they agree to be so disrespected. Why do they agree to this man's fraud being perpetrated on them? On them. I don't understand it. I mean, they passed tax cuts and we got stuck with the bill. We got stuck with the bill for rich people to get more and more and more. I don't understand any of it. I really don't. I do understand Strong and Wrong. I get that they find him entertaining like, wrestling, but it's fake. And that's fine if you like sports like that. But this is the presidency of the United States. He is not worthy. Lou in Arizona.
Hi, Randy.
Hello, Lou.
I have a question about impeachment.
Sure.
There's two punishments in the Constitution as a result of impeachment. One is removal from office, and the other is disqualification from holding an office in the future.
No, that's removal. They're both connected. So if you are removed, then you are not allowed to hold any position of honor or trust ever again.
Okay, that makes sense then. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Because impeachment is an indictment. That's all you have to remember is that the president, when he's impeached, is indicted, meaning there's probable cause he committed a crime, and then there's a trial. And if he's found guilty, the punishment is he has to leave office, and he is now prohibited from holding any position of trust or honor ever.
Thank you very much.
Which means he couldn't even run a charity. You understand? He couldn't even run a charity. He couldn't be the CEO of a public company. That's what that means. All right, Dan in California.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Sorry, I had you on speaker. So I wrote down 3 points you were talking about, Barr, earlier. And I just, I wish the Democrats would just unleash this plethora of information they have to make them look like idiots. They should use the phrase "cover up Barr" because that was his nickname before, right?
That was what?
That was William Barr's nickname, because he's covered stuff up before. Didn't he have a nickname, cover up Barr?
Yeah, and Iran Contra. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, how does he have any credibility? Because he demonstrably lied to the American people about the OLC and the policy of not indicting a sitting president.
No, he didn't lie. That is the rule. That is the rule that OLC has crafted, saying that you could have a serial killer as president and you can't indict him. You can't indict him.
No, but he did lie about it because he said that policy had nothing to do with Mueller's findings.
Oh, I see. Yes, that was the lie about OLC.
Yeah, so he came right out and lied, and
he said, I think everybody will remember. I think everybody will remember if we just say, but for that Mueller didn't find, but for the OLC opinion. Right.
Yes, I remember that.
But Mueller testified that it was because of the OLC opinion that he could not indict. Right. That's right.
So why in every single interview this man is in, why doesn't somebody say why? Let me ask you, Mr. Barr, why did you ignore the subpoenas? Why did you refuse to come before Congress? Because you are not abiding by the law.
Here's a little detail. Here's a little detail about what Bill Barr is doing. This is very interesting too. So if Bill Barr disagrees with what Horowitz's Inspector General report says, then Bill Barr is supposed to, by law, write a memo, a document, whatever, to the IG saying he disagrees and here's why. And that is supposed to be included as an addendum to the IG report. But Bill Barr did not do that. Bill Barr just went on television because Bill Barr will not put that in writing.
And everybody's like, we've never seen this before. We are just in a strange time.
It's dystopian is what it is. Everything is backwards. The law doesn't matter. Only Trump does. The people who are breaking the law are the ones that are, accusing others of breaking the law. The crooked bastard is the president of the United States, and he's accusing Adam Schiff, who is, literally protecting and defending this democracy from Donald Trump. It is just, everything is backwards. The courts are ruling in his favor. It means the courts are going against him. Lisa Page got a restraining order on Peter Strzok means there was no restraining order on Peter Strzok.
Where's Melania on that? Be best. What happened to that?
Thanks. Lisa in Oregon.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I've got a terrible little phone.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Is that a flip phone?
No.
Oh.
Anywho, I believe that Trump has committed a domestic act of terrorism. Because if he has asked a foreign government to attack us, then isn't that a domestic form of terrorism?
It's a domestic form of treason in that he's supporting an adversary, an enemy.
Right. And, they know what they're doing. We've all had access to information. The Internet's been around for 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We all have access to the same information. So ignorance is not an excuse. And I think they know exactly what they're doing.
Who?
Does that make sense?
Who? I don't know. Who knows exactly what they're doing?
Fatality. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
As far as I'm aware, this is the first time in history that this has been done to a presidential campaign, the use of these counterintelligence techniques against a presidential campaign. And we have to remember that in today's world, presidential campaigns are frequently in contact with foreign persons. And indeed, in most campaigns, there are signs of illegal foreign money coming in. And we don't automatically assume that the campaigns are nefarious and traitors and acting in league with foreign powers. There has to be some basis before we use these very potent powers in our core First Amendment activity. And here, I felt this was very flimsy. Basically, I think the department has a rule of reason, which is at the end of the day, is what you're relying on sufficiently powerful to justify the techniques you're using? And the question there is, how strong is the evidence? How sensitive is the activity you're looking at? And what are the alternatives? And I think when you step back here and say, what was this all based on? It's not sufficient. Remember, there was and never has been any evidence of collusion, and yet this campaign and the president's administration has been dominated by this investigation into what turns out to be completely baseless.
Okay, let's look at what the FBI was looking at in July of 2016. The Russians had already hacked the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. The Democratic National Committee's emails had been stolen by Russian intelligence officers, hackers, and had been released by WikiLeaks to hurt Hillary Clinton right at the start of the Democratic National Convention. It had become clear to the FBI that Moscow was responsible for the hack because they left the same fingerprints that they had left prior when they hacked us. Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear, remember all that? Same exact signatures. So they knew that there had been a Russian hack into the Clinton campaign and into the Democratic National Committee. After the DNC was hacked and the emails were released ahead of the Democratic National Convention, an Australian diplomat said 7 weeks prior he had had a drunken, whining sort of afternoon with a Trump campaign foreign policy expert that Trump had personally named himself, George Papadopoulos, who told the Australian diplomat that Russia was going to hack the DNC and they were going to get Hillary's emails and they were going to dirty up Hillary Clinton because they preferred Donald Trump. So let's just stop right there. If the FBI knew that the Russians had hacked into the DNC, if the FBI saw that WikiLeaks was releasing the stolen, ill-gotten goods, and if the FBI was approached by a Five Eyes partner, meaning an intelligence-sharing nation, who said, you know, it's very interesting that this is happening now because 7 weeks ago, I had a guy who gave me a heads up that it was going to happen. Should the FBI have done nothing? That is the question you have to answer for yourself. If the Russians were inserting themselves into the 2016 election with a preference for Donald Trump, obviously they had that, and an Australian diplomat said 7 weeks earlier, before the dump, before the hack was known to the FBI, he was told it was going to happen, and he's coming to us now to say, damn, something is going on. Should the FBI have not opened up a counterintelligence investigation into Russia's activities in our election? Should they not have protected the election? They never opened up an investigation into the campaign of Donald Trump. There was a hack, there was a release, and there was Australian information that predated the hack and the release. So the FBI opened an investigation. And that is what the Inspector General found. That is what they found, and that is why it was a properly predicated counterintelligence investigation. And Bill Barr is lying, saying that there was no evidence, the thinnest of evidence, bullcrap. It had already happened. And an Australian was able to say he was told it was going to happen 7 weeks before it happened. That's just a fact. And the FBI chose well, didn't they? They picked the right thing to do. They kept it quiet. The FBI never went to the media. They never told anybody there was a counterintelligence investigation into Russia and our elections. No, they suffered through everybody defending Vladimir Putin. They suffered through the president standing on a stage and saying, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you can find the 30,000 emails that are missing. They suffered through knowing Paul Manafort was already under investigation for laundering Viktor Yanukovych money that he received from him, who was a Putin puppet in Ukraine. He also laundered money from Oleg Deripaska. He was also deeply in debt to Oleg Deripaska. They suffered through watching Michael Flynn sit on Russian TV, sitting at a table with Vladimir Putin. They suffered through knowing Manafort, was a pro-Putin, propagandist. They suffered through Carter Page, who they had investigated previously, like years before, in 2014 for being a Russian agent. And they never, ever told the press. They never went to the media. Now, if Strzok and Page were so in charge, or if they had information that would really damage Trump, this was the information. And they never told anybody. They also kind of knew that there was a Trump Tower Moscow negotiation going on. They also knew that Donald Trump had been in contact with Putin's office about the Trump Moscow Tower, that he lied on the campaign trail about when he said, I have nothing to do with Russia. I have no business deals with Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. They knew that was a lie. They knew that Jared Kushner and Jr. had in June of 2016 already had the Trump Tower meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya. and that she had promised dirt on Hillary Clinton to get that meeting, right? And they never leaked it to the press. They never told anybody there was a counterintelligence investigation ever. They opened up the counterintelligence investigation on July 31st, 2016. All these things had already happened. In early August, just after they opened the counterintelligence investigation into Russia, Manafort met with a business associate, Konstantin Kilimnik, who is a Russian intelligence officer, and handed him Trump campaign internal polling data. For what purpose was he giving Putin American presidential internal polling data? And they never told the press there was a counterintelligence investigation, did they?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Was the launch the origination of the FBI probe into Russian interference involving U.S. citizens lawfully authorized and pursued?
Well, I think it's important for the American people to know that when the FBI opens an investigation, it does so with proper predication, with proper authorization, based on the law and the facts and nothing else. And I think it's important that the Inspector General found that in this particular instance, the investigation was opened with appropriate predication and authorization.
What's the biggest takeaway and the most important takeaway from the report for you?
Well, I think there's a number of takeaways that are important. One, that we fully cooperated with this independent review. Two, that we fully accept its findings and recommendations. Three, that the Inspector General did not find political bias or improper motivations impacting the opening of the investigation or the decision to use certain investigative tools during the investigations.
Including FISA.
Including FISA.
So, all right, let's talk about FISA. So we've laid out a timeline for you, right? The Russians hack right ahead of the DNC. Well, they've already hacked. Right before the DNC, they released the hacked material through WikiLeaks, right? Just ahead of the Democratic National Convention. The Australians see that, and they say, wow, 7 weeks ago, we met with this guy, George Papadopoulos, who said he was a foreign policy expert for the Trump campaign, and he told us that the Russians told him 7 weeks before this even happened that it was going to happen, that they had hacked, they had it, they were going to do something to get it out there, and here it is. And that was the beginning of knowing, of the FBI knowing that Russia was attacking us, that they had declared cyber war on our elections. In July, or actually in June, Donald Trump Jr., Manafort, Kushner, they have the Trump Tower meeting. And they're meeting with Russians. So much so that they need translators who promised dirt on Hillary Clinton. The counterintelligence investigation into Russia begins on July 31st, 2016. The next week in August, early August, Paul Manafort is giving polling data, internal Trump campaign polling data to the Russians. His office manager in Kiev is Konstantin Kilimnik, who is a Russian intelligence officer. Paul Manafort, before he joined the Trump campaign, was already under investigation by the FBI for tax evasion and money laundering. And now all of a sudden he's the Trump campaign advisor. But they don't investigate the Trump campaign then either. Let's talk about the Steele dossier. How did the Steele dossier even get to the FBI? John McCain and Lindsey Graham. Oh, yeah. John McCain got the Steele dossier because Steele gave it to him. When did he give it to him? He gave it to him on November 18th, 2016. November 18th, 2016. July is when it opens. Last day of July, August, September, October, November. 4 months later. I don't think that any of the counterintelligence investigations into Russia had anything to do with the Steele dossier. Your timeline just falls apart right there, doesn't it? It falls apart with the hacking and the release, too. Okay, but that said. So John McCain goes to Lindsay and says to Lindsay, I got this weird document. I got this really strange document from this, former MI6 guy, Chris Steele. Da-da-da-da-da. What do I do with it? Lindsey Graham takes a look at it, and here's Lindsey Graham's quote. Quote, and I told him the only thing I knew to do with it, because it could be a bunch of garbage, but it could be true, who knows? I told him, turn it over to somebody whose job it is to find these things out, and John McCain acted appropriately. So that was in November. The counterintelligence investigation into Russia had already been open for 4 months because of the hacking and the release. And then in November, on November 18th, McCain gets the Steele dossier, goes to Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey Graham tells him, hand it to the FBI. And in December of 2016, after the election, that is when John McCain gives the Steele dossier to the FBI. Sorry, everybody. Davey in Indiana. Dave? Oh, Dave. Robert in Utah.
That's Randy.
Hi, Robert.
Hey, good job.
Thank you.
You were wondering why these people continue to support him no matter what he does. They have tied this guy to their religion.
Religion?
You can go down to Walmart. Yes. You can go down to Walmart right here in my little town and buy DVDs called The Trump Prophecy. And that's why you'll never get them to shake loose from him. The people that support him now will continue to, and that, that's just the way it is.
So the people that support Trump still use DVDs? That's sad.
I still use DVDs.
Oh, you do?
Don't get too hard on us.
Oh, no, seriously. My computers don't even have slots for them anymore. I don't, yeah. But, Trump has become, a demagogue. I mean, there's no question that Trump is this demagogue, and I get it. But I don't understand why they are willing to be disrespected, for anything, for anybody. I mean,
they'll do anything for their religion. That's the reason.
But if their religion includes a false prophet, is it a religion or is it a cult?
I'll let you call that one.
Well,
you know what I'm saying. I mean, these people. I mean, when you actually start looking at the hardcore beliefs of people all over the world, you realize it's not that hard to BS people.
No, I know. It really isn't. But, remember the old saying, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right?
Let's hope they don't get fooled twice.
Again. Yeah. I hear you. I listen, whatever twisted fantasies they have about Trump bringing about the end of the world or the rapture or whatever it is that they think he's going to do for them, he's a false prophet. He isn't imbued with the spirit of anything but Donald Trump. You just got to smarten up because people have literally taken their own lives in service of a demagogue, in service of a false prophet, in service of somebody who tells them that they are the second coming or that they are. I mean, I always thought, if Jesus ever really did come back, people would kill him. Or they'd paint him as a socialist liberal. Or they would say, he was running around with 12 guys. Therefore, he must be, some sort of a subversive gay dude. I just don't, but Donald Trump certainly ain't it. I mean, this man is imbued with the spirit of nothing but himself. He is ate up with his own self-concern, his own. I mean, he lies about his weight. He lies about everything. Raylene in California. No. Len in New York.
You know, the saddest thing about this is you could go on for 6 months and we could still be having split screens where the Republican convention is going on and Mike Pompeo is finally being forced to be in front of Congress. We haven't heard a word from Parnas. You know, they're rushing this along, and this could have been stringing him up just when the election was coming around. And all these octogenarians are in a hurry to get this over because they don't have the stomach for it. But there is so much corruption to expose over the next 6 to 9 months, and they're just letting it go.
So you're for more through
the election.
Articles. Well, see, that's why Mitch McConnell doesn't want what Donald Trump wants. Donald Trump wants a circus. He wants, Schiff, and he wants the whistleblower, and he wants all these people brought and sworn and that have absolutely nothing to do with his crimes, right? And that's why Mitch McConnell wants the trial to come and go. He wants it really fast. But you need 51 votes to conduct this trial, so 51 is going to be what you're waiting to see.
We'd still be in the representatives by the election.
You don't want to be in the House of Representatives by the election because he would have been stonewalled.
Well, if everybody's being hauled in front and exposed.
You want this in the Republican Senate, okay? You want this in the Republican Senate where they can't claim partisanship, where 51 votes are going to decide who testifies and who doesn't, okay? That's what you want.
Turn up your mind.
If we decide the president is above the law, then we will no longer live in a democracy. We will live in a dictatorship, trading the values of Madison for the values of Moscow. That's why this should matter to every single person watching tonight. Because if the president gets away with trying to cheat in the 2020 election, he will no longer be responsive to the will of the people.
And there you have it. So today the House is debating amendments to the articles of impeachment, things like let's change the words in the first article of impeachment or the second article of impeachment to include Hunter Biden, stuff like that. And I got to tell you, this is tedious because it's a Republican effort. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to listen to these people. And so I'm going to skip it unless you really, 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 really want to watch it. It's still going on, obviously. The Republicans are trying to amend the 2 articles. That's what's going on here. And they're trying to paint Donald Trump once again as the victim here. It is Donald Trump that is being victimized. It's not democracy. It's not Congress that's being ignored. It's not, this really does remind me. Everybody used to say, how did it happen in Germany? How did all that happen? There was one single moment in Germany when, the duly elected, guy actually defanged, dismantled, disempowered, disemboweled Congress, his Congress, right? The Reichstag. And it was called the Enabling Act. And what it said was the president could do whatever he wants. The chancellor in this case and the Reichstag in their case. In our case, the president and Congress. Congress, the Republicans in Congress are so hell-bent on somehow eking out some sort of I don't know, how do you even put this, some sort of reputation for the GOP, some sort of, it's like they're not arguing for the presidency and the powers of the president. They're arguing for Donald Trump, right? They're not saying the president of the United States can do whatever he wants because Donald Trump isn't always going to be the president. And I got a funny feeling the next president will not be a Trumper, okay? Will not be from the party of Trump. There is no GOP. There just isn't. He destroyed it. And now all that's left is the party of Trump. And at the core, Republicans are not saying it's okay for a U.S. president to act like this. They're arguing that it's okay for this man to act like this. They're saying it's okay for their own powers powers that they have as a co-equal branch of government, powers that they have as a congressman to subpoena documents, to subpoena witnesses, to cross-examine witnesses who are subpoenaed by the majority party. All this that they're arguing against the powers of Congress for this man. That's the Enabling Act. That's what would turn us from a democracy, a republic, if you will, into something we don't recognize. This is not legitimately about improving the executive branch or improving, the distribution of democracy. This is about fixing and rigging another election so that they can maintain some sort of relevance going forward, because there is no GOP. It's just the Trump party. That's all that's left, is the party of Trump. And they're trying to preserve that ever-shrinking, narrowing, smallish faction, smallish tribe that exists in this country. That is what they're doing. And it's frightening to watch because, recent history, obviously we weren't alive for this, or at least I wasn't, but our parents were, our grandparents were, and they fought against this kind of fascism. That's what I'm saying. I don't even know what you would call it at this point. David Cicilline right there calls it a dictatorship. That's one word. Obviously, neo-fascism or fascism or autocracy or an oligarchy or some sort of anti-democratic system of government is what we will end up with if this president isn't confronted in a trial by his accusers and witnesses are called. And the Senate just, says let's acquit him. Because acquittal only takes 51 votes. Dismissal. See, words really matter here, and that's why this is really important that you understand this. So impeachment is not removal. I think most people listening to this show get that, because I would consider, even if you disagree with me, you better educated on what impeachment is, on what a Senate trial is, how impeachment and then removal in the Senate works. So the impeachment is simply an indictment. And I just want to refresh your recollection just a tad, just a touch, okay? When Bill Clinton was impeached, there were no fact witnesses, not one. I don't know if anybody even remembers 1998 anymore because it's all such a blur, but I do. The only witness in the impeachment of Bill Clinton was the independent counsel. It was Ken Starr. Not one single fact witness was called. It lasted, I think, 72 or 79 days. This has gone on longer at this point. And no fact witnesses. Now, the Democrats afforded fact witnesses. They actually invited Donald Trump himself to come and testify. They invited any witness that Donald Trump would like to send to testify who had direct knowledge of his ask of the Ukrainians. Any knowledge whatsoever. The 17 witnesses, the fact witnesses that we did hear from, are 17 more witnesses than were allowed for Bill Clinton's impeachment. That's number one. Number two, the 17 witnesses who testified at their own peril because Donald Trump ordered a blanket denial of compliance with any subpoena for any documents, any subpoena for any witnesses. Now, the people who testified, Vindman, Volker was a Republican witness, as was Sondland. Okay, those were Republican witnesses that they requested, and they were given seats at the table and 7-8 hours to testify. Okay, but the 17 witnesses that we saw, Fiona Hill, Vindman, Volker, Sondland, Fiona Hill, Laura Cooper, Jennifer Williams, who was she's assistant to Mike Pence. They all testified at their own peril. Okay, they said, I can't stay quiet. I'm going to ignore what the president is saying and blocking, and I'm going to show up. And so we had some patriots here. We had some people who obviously worked for Donald Trump. They were all appointees of Donald Trump. Not one person was not appointed by Donald Trump that testified. Every single one of them. So this lie that they keep saying the president is being victimized by the procedure, the president is being victimized and deprived a chance to make his peace or a chance to prove his innocence, that is just a lie as is the lie that Ukraine did not know that the aid was held up. Ukraine, of course, knew that the aid was held up. There are text messages that clearly show that Ukraine knew. There's testimony that Ukraine knew. Laura Cooper testified that Ukraine knew at the Department of Defense, and also that all the benchmarks that were set out for Ukraine with regard to anti-corruption benchmarks had been met in May of last year, before Donald Trump said, oh, they're corrupt, they're corrupt, they're corrupt. They keep trying to portray him as the victim. You know, they do this all the time. Donald Trump was wiretapped. Trump Tower was wiretapped. Then we were told, wait for Devin Nunes report. That will show you that Donald Trump was the victim here. Then they'll show you the Horowitz report. That'll show you Donald Trump was spied on, right? Now he says Ukraine was out to get him. And you've got people in the Republican Party literally propagating this, Putin talking point that Russia didn't do it, that Ukraine did, after a 2.5 year investigation that clearly showed that Russia did the hacking. They did it.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, so you know what? I took a bet. Remember, I took a bet to do a 50-state challenge. We had somebody that was putting 10 grand on the table for Free Speech TV, for the benefit of Free Speech TV. And they said, if you can get one donor in all 50 states, we'll put $10,000 into Free Speech TV. And that happened, and it happened really quick. And so they did. They ponied up the 10 grand. All of a sudden today and tomorrow are the last 2 days of the Winter Pledge Drive for the benefit of Free Speech TV, right? And it's an awesome platform, as you know, and I'm very happy to be on it. So the last 2 days are today and tomorrow. And for today and tomorrow, we got $30,000 in match funds, so that if you would do your giving today and tomorrow, let's say you gave $100, it would be $200. If you gave $1,000, we could turn it into $2,000 for the benefit of Free Speech TV, which is incredible. So whatever you were waiting to do, or whatever you wanted to do, today's the day to do it, because 5 becomes 10 and 100 becomes 2 and 2 becomes 4, up to $30,000 today and tomorrow. So all you got to do is click on, just go to freespeechtv.org. I'm sorry, no TV, freespeech.org, freespeech.org, and donate that way. Or you could dial the phone, 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Operators are standing by to take that cash off your hands right now. And thank you very much. All right. So what was I talking about? Oh, how Trump has to be the victim here. And you know what's really sick? What's really sick and what's really scary and what's really in the balance, which is why, although this is tedious, I get it. This is not really a debate that's going on in the House. I would have loved to seen a real debate, a real format, 2 people at least on the floor, behind podiums, debating each other. That would have been much more, I think, interesting for the viewers. I really do. I think that if somebody makes a claim and then the person who's debating them can debunk that claim in real time, I think it goes a longer way. And the thing that we are trying to protect is no less than our republic, our system of government, our Constitution. And I know that sounds so heady, and I know that sounds so major, because it is. You have to understand, when people ask me, like, how did this happen? How did this happen in these other countries? Or how did it happen in Germany? You have to remember that Adolf was duly elected chancellor. He really was. He was, the people voted for him. Strong and wrong, it sold. Why? Because their economy had tanked. You had something called the Weimar Republic, where Deutschmarks were so worthless that to buy a loaf of bread, you had to have a wheelbarrow full of them. That's how worthless they became. So people were desperate. That is not the case in the United States, although the wealth income distribution in this country is so skewed towards those who can afford to pay lobbyists to do stuff on their behalf to get the money to them. I mean, there's no question the system is corrupt. No question at all. But the answer was not Trump. All right. So the answer similarly, was not Adolf. But he was able to propagandize an entire population. He became a duly elected Chancellor of Germany. And once he did, he found the Reichstag. He found it very inconvenient. It was slow. It's tedious. It's, exhausting to have to argue for stuff, right? To have to show that there's value in what you want to do for the people that you represent. And so he decided that he would go out and propagandize an entire country with crazy, crazy off-the-hook rallies. And he did it. And the people were like all supportive of his, his message of only I can fix it. Only I can do it. It's just too cumbersome to observe a constitution. And yes, they had a constitution. It's just too cumbersome to have to go and argue with these members of the Reichstag and the members of the Reichsrat, right? That's their House and Senate. So here's what I propose. I propose that you pass a law that says I get to do whatever I want. I rule by decree. And these freaks in the Reichstag and the Reichsrat, they actually voted away their own power. And the rest, as they say, is history. Horrible, anti-human, unthinkable murder, mayhem, destruction, gassing of people, starving of people, wholesale, ghettoizing of people, the whole thing. The whole thing, everything that happened. And it all happened because of the Enabling Act. It gave absolute power to the chancellor, is what it did. And that is what the Republicans in Congress are arguing for. Poor Donald Trump, he's a victim. He's a victim of the House majority. He's a victim of people who want to uphold the Constitution. He's a victim of the Constitution. My God, he thinks Article 2 lets him do whatever he wants. We should let him do whatever he wants because he alone can fix it. Donald Trump has always been portrayed by these people as the victim, always. Donald Trump was spied on. This is outrageous. We have an attorney general who actually goes along with this. I mean, this guy is a foxbot. Our attorney general is a foxbot. He propagates, all kinds of victimhood propaganda. Nothing that was borne out in the Horowitz report. Nothing at all happened to the Trump campaign. Nothing. There was one FISA warrant that was issued on Carter Page. Carter Page had been the subject of a FISA warrant back in 2013 and 2014. Now, those FISA warrants have to be renewed every 90 days. So I think the 2014 must have expired. And then fast forward to 2016, here's this guy who's meeting with Russians like crazy. And, but after he leaves the Trump campaign, that's when another application was made to the FISA court to surveil him. There was no problem with that until the third renewal. And the third renewal was done very sloppily. But he had nothing to do with the Trump campaign by January of 2017 because there was no Trump campaign by January 2017 because Trump was already president by 2017. So that didn't happen. No one spied on the campaign. No one spied on Trump. There were no operatives inside the campaign. That just didn't happen. There was a counterintelligence investigation into Russian hacking, which did happen. Those documents were hacked. They were already released by July 31st, 2016, when the counterintelligence investigation was opened. They were already hacked and released, and then Australia came to the United States and said, wow, that's really weird that they did hack, and they are releasing because 7 weeks ago, this guy who said he was part of the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos, sat down and drank too much wine and started telling us the Russians were going to hack and they had dirt on Hillary Clinton that they were going to disseminate in order to prop up Donald Trump. And as soon as the Australians, combined with the fact that Russia was hacking and did release, that's how the Russia investigation was opened. And they got indictments out the yin. Right? Mueller did not investigate Donald Trump until after Donald Trump fired James Comey, and then he investigated him for obstruction of justice.
To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. This is what the Republicans are arguing.
For some of you may say, the ranking member talks about process. The ranking member talks about process. The ranking member talks about process, never the foundation. Believe me, we will inundate you with the facts, and I have already. Some of you just don't choose to report them.
Process. He sounds crazy because it's a crazy argument when being confronted with real facts that a real president really did try to get a foreign government to announce an investigation into the 2016 election and into the Bidens. I mean, just to benefit himself in the 2020 election, okay? But they're arguing process. The rules aren't fair. The rules.
We just can't simply allow the mischaracterization and the misstatement of the rules, the history of the rules, and House resolutions to advance political arguments here. We can't stand for it. And so I want to address again these statements that there was some right to have witnesses come in. It is absolutely true that that's the case. Over 50 years ago, when the rule was written, when Rule 6 was written, it said it's normal procedure for witnesses representing both sides of the issue to give testimony at committee hearings. And that's what happened at the December 4th meeting. And that's what happened at the December 9th meeting. Let's be honest about the rules. And House Resolution 660, I would point out again, provides an opportunity for the President of the United States to come. He could have come on December 4th. He could have sent any of his witnesses, and he didn't. But no one should be surprised, because that's been the President's approach throughout, is to refuse to allow anyone with the kind of information that my colleagues claim they're interested in from coming to testify, from coming to answer questions directly.
So there you have it. Listen, the whole thing, Trump is the victim here. The rules aren't fair. Process. But even the process argument is a bogus argument. Everything they're arguing is bogus. So you say to yourself, why are they willing to do this? And the answer is clear to me. It's because there is no GOP. There's no Republican Party. There's only the party of Trump. Okay. And the party of Trump is pressuring Congress to give up its own power so he can rule by decree, because he alone can fix it. And the way that they do it is they argue that he's the one being victimized here. He's the one that's not getting a fair shake. He argues that Ukraine was out to take me down. They were trying to take me down. He was the victim in 2016. He was the victim. Now, we know that Russia interfered. We know that Russia hacked. We know that Russia passed the hacked material to WikiLeaks. We know that Roger Stone, in his trial, was found guilty of 7 felonies, including he was the go-between for WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign to organize and plan the timed release of those stolen emails in order to benefit Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is turning that on its head. And he's saying, no, none of that happened. None of that happened. What really happened was Ukraine was out to take me down. Ukraine was out to take me down. They wanted Hillary Clinton. Why? Because an ambassador, former ambassador named Ambassador Chalet, you can look him up, wrote an op-ed in The Hill saying that the Ukrainians were very insulted when Donald Trump said on television that the Russian annexation of Crimea was good for Ukraine, that the Ukrainians, according to Donald Trump, wanted to be part of Russia. That's what he said. And during the campaign, when Paul Manafort was the chairman during the Republican National Convention, they changed their platform to preclude a sale of lethal weapons to Ukraine. And Ukraine was watching all this. And so one ambassador wrote a letter saying this is all very insulting to the Ukrainian people. And you really should stop saying that we want to be part of Russia, because we don't. Ukraine was out to take me down, because anybody that says anything that is slightly negative about Donald Trump is out to take him down. Every person who's been sexually assaulted by Donald Trump was classified as a lunatic, crazy, ugly, a liar, Meanwhile, we know Mr. Anti-Corruption paid 2 people during the campaign to shut up about it. We know Mr. Anti-Corruption was secretly negotiating with Moscow for a Trump Tower during the entire campaign. We know that there was a Trump Tower meeting before the FBI opened up a counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference with Manafort and Jared and Jr., with Natalia Veselnitskaya. We know that now that the Australians had come to us saying this guy, George Papadopoulos, 7 weeks before they hacked and released, said they were hacking and going to release. I think you better look into Russia. I think they're up to no good in your election. But Trump was the one that was victimized. Trump was. His campaign was spied on. No, it wasn't. Trump Tower was wiretapped. No, it wasn't. Ukraine is out to take me down. No, they weren't. Meanwhile, this man hunts people. He literally hunts them. Now, let's remember, he was a birther. Oh, you won't believe what we're finding. They never found anything. It's what he does. He stakes out a claim. He says something horrible has happened. He's the only one that can get to the bottom of it. He's going to get to the bottom of it. And all he's doing is propping himself up. All for his benefit. All of this hunting of people, all of this smearing. Look at Marie Yovanovitch. Smeared her after 33 years of good foreign service to this nation. Smeared her. Could have just fired her. Could have just fired her. That he can do. But oh no. He had to go after her. He had to damage her. He had to smear her, defame her, hurt her, say she was bad news on that phone call to the Ukrainian president. This is so sick. And then he has this little hostage video that we all saw. It was a pull-aside at the UN summit. And he pulls aside Zelensky and forces Zelensky to say, well, he didn't push me. He didn't push. See, no pressure. See, no pressure. Very sick man and dangerous. But what's really dangerous is this Congress, because they are so willing to sit there and say he is the great savior. He is the person that, we are loyal to blindly. He can do whatever he wants. It's like a mob boss, right? He could do whatever he wants. He can rule by decree if he wants. And we will give up the power that we have as Congress people, as Congress members, and imbue him with the power to rule by decree. And that is what is at stake here. Nothing less than our system of government, our system of checks and balances, which is in the Constitution. That is what is at stake. And do not get too tired or weary or exhausted that you can't know that. Yes, these hearings are tedious. Most congressional business is. And no, I'm not going to force you to watch the Republicans try to amend the 2 articles of impeachment. I'm not. But there were some very, very important pieces of testimony. There's one in particular, Hakeem Jeffries. He laid out the entire case in his 5 minutes, and it is magnificently done. The rest of it, screaming and yelling about process and drunk driving and Hunter Biden was a coke fiend. I mean, all of that is useless.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, don't forget, today and tomorrow are the last 2 days of the Winter Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and there is $30,000 worth of match money that donors have put up. So if you gave $10 today, it would become $20. If you gave $20, it would become $40, $100, $200, on and on, up to $30,000. That is really, really cool. And we'd love to close out the Winter Pledge Drive with, a lot of money going to Free Speech TV, because we love this platform, okay? It's Dish Network, it's DirecTV, it's Sling, Roku, Apple. There are gifts also for like $150. You get a signed by me hat, Randi Rhodes Show hat, the RBG action figure. She is awesome. Everybody seems to really want one of her. Which, by the way, reminds me, Bill Barr, everybody was like, what is Bill Barr's game? What is he? It seems to me he wants to be the next Supreme Court justice nominated by Donald Trump. And that would happen most likely if Ruth Bader Ginsburg should, call it a day, one way or another. And that's pretty sickening. And it seems like this next thing we're supposed to be... First, we were going to wait for Nunes' report to show he was spied on. That didn't happen. Then we were going to wait for Horowitz's report to show he was spied on. That didn't happen. Now we're waiting for the guy he's calling Bull Durham. Now we're waiting for Durham, a U.S. attorney handpicked by Bill Barr, to show he was wiretapped, he was spied on, whatever it is. I mean, it's just so ridiculous, right? It's always something else that... Move on to the next thing. The next, I will prove, I will show. It never happens. It never appears. A fire and fury. We're going to get bombed by North Korea. Oh, see, we didn't get bombed by North Korea. I deserve the Nobel Prize. I'm going to call Shinzo Abe, and I'm going to ask him to nominate me for the Nobel Prize. I mean, this is a sick, twisted freak. And anybody that says that about him has got to be destroyed. I don't mean fired. I don't mean, reprimand. I mean they have to be destroyed. Their entire reputation has to be destroyed, to the point where his supporters lock him up, lock her up, go to jail. I mean, these people have to be punished because they're hip to the fact that this man is a fraud and a phony, and everything that happens in this country victimizes him. It's very sick. It's very sad. But that's where we are. And I'm telling you, there is nothing less than our way of life that is on the line with the way that this particular thing goes. So we know we have enough votes to impeach, which is just the indictment. What is going to happen with Mitch McConnell's Republican Senate? Okay, now there's rumors that Mitch McConnell is going to give it like 2 weeks. And here's how it supposedly will look. The House managers, who will be the attorneys for the people, they're called House managers. Those will be the prosecutors. They will be allowed to make their case. They'll, opening statement, whatever they want to do. And then Trump's going to pick his lawyer. Now, there's rumors it'll be Dershowitz. Oh, God help us. All right, and they will make the counter argument, right? They will do the defense. And then Mitch McConnell is going to call for a vote to acquit him. Now, what's interesting about that is you only need 51 votes to acquit him. To dismiss is 67 votes. So words matter here. But it seems like Mitch McConnell has told the Republicans, don't let any witnesses testify. Don't do it. It's mutually assured destruction, meaning we will get destroyed if witnesses can testify. If Mulvaney can testify, if Bolton testifies, if Pompeo gets to testify, if Pence is called to testify, anybody that's called to testify cannot make the case that the president did not do the extortion that he's being accused of doing. Nobody can testify that the president didn't obstruct Congress materially, categorically. Not that the president's never invoked executive privilege. Oh, no. Instead, he made some specious argument that he could rule by decree. He tried to make the Enabling Act argument that he doesn't need to go through Congress. He really did do that. Don't you remember his lawyer went to court and his lawyer was arguing that, the president could say that Don McGahn doesn't need to testify, even though Don McGahn is not part of the executive branch. And Don McGahn has already answered hours and hours and hours of questions that Mueller asked him in person. You can't ex post facto. You can't go back now and say, well, Don McGahn answered Mueller's questions, but he's not going to answer them again. That you can't exert executive privilege when somebody's already testified. It doesn't work that way. So the president tried to make this very specious, almost criminal argument that the president was completely and totally immune from any prosecution. And they argued it in court, and the judge was like, wait a minute, let's look at the, is it in here somewhere? He said, let's look at the case of shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue. Let's look at that. And the lawyer for Donald Trump said, yeah, well, if he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, you couldn't indict him. And he said, even if the president committed murder, he said, yeah, no, it's not forever. It's just until he leaves the office. Then you can indict him. But while he's president, even if he shot somebody and murdered somebody in cold blood, in broad daylight, no, you can't. And the court said, he's not a king. He doesn't rule by decree. This isn't a dictatorship. And they rejected it. But Donald Trump has not claimed executive privilege, and he can't over Don McGahn because Don McGahn's already answered questions. So have others. Alan, Delaware.
How you doing, Randy? First time, long time.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
I was just calling to ask you, if Trump gets away with this impeachment and he gets reelected, is it time to then flee the country, call it a wrap, go home, get out of here or whatever?
Howard and I talk about it all the time, and he's a yes. He thinks that it would be time to go. Me, I don't know. I don't know if I would stay and fight because I'm a fighter by nature, or if I would, respect, the head of my family and do what he wants me to do. I mean, look, he's the head, but I'm the neck. I can make the head turn any way I want. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would just depend on the sense I get at the time. You know what I mean? And everybody's going to have to make that call. They really are. I mean, if this man gets reelected and there's still a majority of Republicans in either branch of government, everybody's going to have to sit there and have their come to, Jesus moment and decide if they're ready for the rapture at the hands of Donald Trump.
Yeah, because it's very scary to me. I mean, the whole GOP just pretty much folded and just said F you to the country. I mean,
they are saying that. They are saying, well, what they're saying is F you to the Constitution. They're saying F you to our own power. We don't need it. As long as we have him, we don't need any power. Let him do it. Whatever he wants to do, let him do. Because if we vote against him, we're gone. We're gone.
Right.
And they're so busy keeping their jobs that they're forgetting that they need to do their jobs, because nothing less than the Constitution, the way that we govern ourselves, is at stake.
Exactly right. Well, I thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Listen, just remember this, everybody. America is a very young place. We're very young. We're only like tweens not even tweens. We're toddlers in the great history of democracies, okay? Now, I will tell you, here's a little sunny outlook on it. If Donald Trump is Caligula, the Roman Empire and all that, right? Then I want you to understand that even after Caligula, the Roman Empire went on for another 400 years. So could we survive him with him? Maybe. But then again, you look at recent history, like 1933, and as soon as in Germany, I'll say the House of Representatives, but the Reichstag, when they decided that they would give up their power and that they would give all power to the chancellor, and that he could do whatever he wants. He could rule by decree. He could make laws. He could outlaw, trade unions, which are unions. He could outlaw, any opposition party. He could make it illegal to belong to a party. He could, do whatever he wants. He could classify people based on their religion. He could ghettoize people according to that. Whatever he wanted. Gay people, dead, right? Whatever he wanted to do, he could do. It seems to me that that's what the party of Trump is willing to do. Because there is no Republican Party. And when you look at the Senate, there are some Republicans still there. And when you look at the House, there are some Republicans still there. But they're all retiring. They're all leaving. They're leaving in droves because I don't think they want to make this decision. I mean, you got so many Republicans retiring because they don't want to be the party of Trump. So, yeah, it's dicey. It's very dicey. But if he isn't removed, and if there is no trial, let that be a signal.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
This is Trump's lawyer, I think his name was Consovoy, actually arguing to the court that Donald Trump is immune from any and all prosecution for any any criminal acts while he's president.
What's your view on the Fifth Avenue example? Local authorities couldn't investigate. They couldn't do anything about it.
I think once a president is removed from office, any local authority. This is not a permanent immunity.
Well, I'm talking about while in office.
No.
Nothing could be done. That's your position.
That is correct.
That is fascism. That is really freaking dangerous, okay? And that is what the position of the Trump administration is and has been about the president's criminal behavior. He's immune from investigation. He's immune from prosecution. He's immune from... And you know what's really interesting is that when people argue that because of a stupid opinion, it's not a constitutional requirement, it's not a law, it's not a statute, it's not anything that anybody in this country ever sent their representative to the Hill to vote for or was signed into law by any president. It's just a little office inside the Department of Justice, the OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel, that has decided that a president of the United States cannot be indicted for any crime while he's president. And now Trump's lawyers are arguing that you can't even investigate a president while he's in office, that you can't do anything at all to check a president. And the thing that constitutional scholars have argued about that OLC rule being valid is that the reason why it's valid is because you have impeachment and removal as a remedy in the Constitution for a lawless president. And now that we're going through impeachment and we're about to go through a trial with removal, and we don't know if the Senate will even agree to call even one witness, okay? You can see that that is not enough for a lawless president. If the president of the United States, through his lawyer there, is telling the American people that the president of the United States can kill you, kill me, kill you, take your children, separate them, put you in a ghetto, force you to move off of the border because he wants to build a border wall and take your land, whatever he wants to do, whatever your issue is, if the president is allowed to do that, and impeachment and removal is not an option, investigating is not an option, Congress is not an option, and the OLC says the criminal courts are not an option, then you tell me, do we have a republic? Do we have a constitutional democracy? Screw originalists and traditionalists and people who, think it's a living, breathing. That argument doesn't even exist anymore because the Constitution doesn't exist anymore. So you think about that. Jim in California.
Hey, Randy. Long time since I spoke to you. The reason why I'm calling is to talk about the messaging of the Democratic Party, and maybe they need to just change the words a bit. And I'll give you an example, or a couple of examples I'd like to share with you and get your idea. First of all, Lawrence Tribe was on Lawrence O'Donnell a couple of weeks ago discussing the Ukrainian spending and how Trump's that was an abuse of power and he didn't have the right to. But he mentioned the words that I thought that everybody could understand, that Trump was hijacking the power of the purse. That's all. I mean, that's all they said was hijacking the power of the purse. That to me drives the message. And the second thing, now that I've said that, is that with the impeachment, with Trump declaring the impeachment invalid, that he's basically hijacking the power of impeachment.
The power of Congress.
Well, no, yeah, their impeachment power, but he's hijacking the impeachment power.
So there right there are two things that belong to Congress under the Article 1 power that Congress has. Congress comes first in the Constitution. President comes second. But that being said, so here you see Donald Trump taking from Congress and the Republican Party, or the party of Trump, whatever you want to call it now, giving it to him, the power of the purse and the power to investigate and hold the president accountable. So what is left for Congress? What power do they still have if that's something that they allow?
Yeah, the Republicans are letting them. They're allowing him to hijack their power. I mean, anyways.
Well, you know what? He's hijacking from the Democrats the power of the purse, and he's hijacking from the Democrats the power to hold the president accountable under the Constitution. But the Republicans are literally handing him their power.
Yep.
They're totally saying, here you go, rule by decree. We believe in you. We don't believe in democracy. It's tedious. It's messy. It takes so long to do anything. You just do it. You do what you want. You want to round people up. You want to separate mothers and children. You want to steal land from people on the border so you can build some stupid wall. You want to reappropriate money for your stupid wall from, our military men and women who are living in substandard, termite-infested, catching fire electrical system on-base housing. Go for it. You do it. That means we don't have to do anything except go fundraise from foreign governments.
Yep. One other thing. Yesterday you used, or actually a couple of days ago, I was listening to your podcast. You talked about the Biden and how he is not handling the Ukrainian prosecutor mess, or the Republicans are attacking him on. But you used the word "voted out."
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't Biden just say, "Hey, the guy was voted out"?
I don't know.
And that's all it was. He doesn't use those simple words.
I know. I don't understand. Listen, Joe is Joe. Like I said, I've had a relationship with him in the past where I knew him and I like him. And he was very honest and clear with me, although I disagreed with him because when I went to him and I said, why are you letting Bush lie us into wars? Why are you doing that? He said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, I want you to call him a liar. And Joe Biden's answer to me, I'll never forget it as long as I live, was, why do you have to pick the hardest thing to do? You can't call the president of the United States a liar. So that's Joe Biden. It's just Joe Biden. But yes, Shokin was voted out by the Rada, the Ukrainian Reichstag, the Ukrainian House, the Ukrainian Senate. Okay, he was voted out almost unanimously because he would not prosecute Kolashevsky from Burisma. He would not prosecute oligarchs. He would not prosecute corruption in Ukraine. That's what he was doing, and that's why the G7, the EU, the entire NATO alliance, the whole Western world, including us, said you got to meet these benchmarks for anti-corruption in order for you to attract foreign investment and make Ukraine a real democracy. And they did. They took a vote and they got rid of them. And this is who Rudy Giuliani is relying on. And here's another little point. You say this to anybody that questions you. If Ukraine is so corrupt as Donald Trump alleges, and this was all about anti-corruption, even though they had met the benchmarks that we set for them, right, for anti-corruption efforts, then why does he trust Ukraine to investigate anybody, let alone an American citizen and his son?
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Randy.
You're welcome. And here are my questions. I keep repeating them because I really want them to sink in. So Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma in 2014. The GOP had a majority in the House and Senate in 2014. Why didn't they investigate in 14, 15, 16, 17? Why did Trump release hundreds of millions of dollars to Ukraine in 17 and 18 and only withhold until 19 based on an investigation into the Bidens, okay? And how is he alleging that they're so corrupt but they're good enough to investigate an American citizen? And why is he blocking all documents and all witnesses? Why? If they would set him free, if they could exculpate him. Makes no sense.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right. I was not a fan of all of this, complaining and whining of the Republicans today about process and about Hunter Biden's coke habit. Nothing at all was said or done by the Republicans to debunk or to somehow discredit the facts that have been presented in this case. And so the only clip that I think is worthwhile, and it's a little on the long side, I mean, it's 5 minutes, is the the 5-minute, everybody got 5 minutes to make their case. The 5-minute case that Hakeem Jeffries made, because he decided to use his 5 minutes to go through the facts. And I think that you need to know the facts of this case.
Let's actually go through the facts. We're here today because the president abused his power. We're here today because he solicited foreign interference in the 2020 election. He had welcomed foreign interference as it relates to Russia. He solicited foreign interference on the White House lawn with China, and he did it with Ukraine. He's a serial solicitor. Let's go through the facts. Congress allocated $391 million in military aid on a bipartisan basis to Ukraine, currently at war with Russian-backed separatists in the east. Ukraine's a friend, Russia's a foe. Ukraine's a democracy, Russia's a dictatorship. The United States is probably the only thing standing between Vladimir Putin and Ukraine being completely overrun as part of Putin's fantasy to reconstruct the Soviet Union, which would be adverse to the national security interests of the United States. And every single fact witnessed before this Congress said so. You can't even dispute that. So we allocated aid on a bipartisan basis. But then the aid was withheld. So the American people deserve to figure out why. In February, there was a letter sent by the Trump administration saying, okay, the aid is on the way. But it never arrived. In April, he had a phone call, the president, with Zelensky. The word corruption was not mentioned once. And then, in May, the Department of Defense wrote to this Congress and said, all necessary preconditions for the receipt of the aid have been met by the new Ukrainian government, including the implementation of anti-corruption protocols. We have that letter. It was sent to you and it was sent to us. Then in July, on the 18th, at an Office of Management and Budget meeting, the aid was officially frozen at the direction of the president. Twice during the summer, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican majority leader, publicly stated he called the Trump administration. What happened to the aid? Mitch McConnell couldn't get a good answer because there was no good answer. Then on July 25th, there's another call between President Trump and President Zelensky. The word corruption is not mentioned once. But here's what was said. Zelensky talks about defense. And the immediate response is, do us a favor, though. And President Trump says, I need you to look into some things, not related to procurement of defense arms, but related to a wild conspiracy theory connected to the 2016 campaign, and also says, I want you to look into Joe Biden. And then what's interesting, since you think it was such a perfect call, he mentions Rudolph Giuliani. I'm looking at the transcript right now. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Why on an official call would the president mention Rudolph Giuliani? He's not an ambassador. He's not the Secretary of State. He's not a member of the diplomatic corps. He's President Trump's political enforcer. And then what happens? You said you want to talk about the facts. In August, Giuliani travels to Madrid and meets with the Ukrainian government as a follow-up to Trump saying to Ukraine, go meet with Giuliani. And then a statement is drafted about this phony investigation and sent to the Ukrainians. But what happens? In August, the whistleblower complaint is filed. Then on September 9th, the whistleblower complaint is made public to Congress. 2 days later, on September 11th, all of a sudden, the aid is released. Why was the aid released? Because the president was caught red-handed, trying to pressure a foreign government to target an American citizen. I yield back.
Beautifully done, Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Beautifully freaking laid out. That is the case. Those are the facts, and those facts are not in dispute. The president confessed on television in front of all of us when he was asked, what did you want Zelensky to do for the aid? And he said, well, I wanted him to open up an investigation into the Bidens. I also think China ought to open up an investigation into the Bidens, and then lays out some conspiracy theory that is so debunked and untrue that Hunter Biden somehow walked out of China with $1.5 billion. That never happened. He was an advisor to a fund that was trying to raise money, and he got a percentage of whatever he brought into the fund. The fund took in a whopping $4.2 million, and he got 10% of that. That's a nice payday, but that ain't $1.5 billion walking out of China. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a cheat. And he is a complete destroyer of everybody who disagrees with him in the least. It's not that he'll fire you. It's that he will destroy you. And he showed you who he was when he was birthering. When he was out, and we sent people to Hawaii, and you won't believe what we're finding. And he found nothing, because everything he says is a lie. But it's all about, stay tuned, wait for the next episode. You won't believe what happens to the Real Housewives. You won't believe what happens on the next, Survivor. I mean, it's all a big, tease. And there's never a payoff. It's always such a disappointing end with this man. And things get lost. Like democracy, like rule of law, like accountability, like saving lives, like being the shining city on the hill, like American values. I mean, just as a little tiny aside, okay? Remember the big brouhaha about Barron? You can name your child Barron, but you can't make him one because the president is not a king. Testimony by a constitutional scholar from Stanford, Ms. Carlin. Oh, let's read this into the record and make it political. She trashed Barron. No, she just said you can name him whatever you want, but you can't make him into the son of a king, right? Greta Thunberg, little 16-year-old girl who is a avid activist for doing something about climate change. Times Woman of the Year, Times Person of the Year. Donald Trump trashed her and said she needs anger management.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
If you excluded debunked conspiracy theories, could any of these people actually tell you why Vladimir Putin is so bad?
Oh, my God.
Why is he so bad? He's bad, Chuck Todd says. Okay.
Why is he so bad? He murders people. He murdered over 200 journalists. What is wrong with you? He invades his neighbors. He annexes countries that are not his to annex. What is wrong with this? This entire operation over here, they are rooting for Russia.
So Hunter Biden didn't. I know Hunter Biden. I actually like Hunter Biden, but that's totally corrupt, and you know it. Why is it worse to ask about it than it is to do it?
Because people are dying on the front lines. You think it's a joke?
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Like, why do I care?
I'll tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Because those of us who...
Why shouldn't I root for Russia? Because I am.
I just should say for the record, I'm totally opposed to these sanctions, and I don't think that we should be at war with Russia. And I think we should probably take the side of Russia if we have to choose between Russia and Ukraine. That is my view.
Yeah, I mean, it leaves you breathless. They at Fox are advocating that America becomes a dictatorship, that America goes fascist, that America imbues. I actually heard the word the two words unitary executive today come out of the mouths of Republicans. He is the unitary executive. He could do whatever he wants. I mean, it's very sick. It's very strange. It's just they've been trying to delegitimize their own branch of government, Congress, for years. Jan in Washington.
Yeah, Randy, there was a
really nice expose of the Biden thing. But, you know, Kent, he really laid it out pretty like offhandedly, like it means nothing, and none of them, they all said that, you know.
Oh, George Kent. No, George Kent, Fiona Hill, people who are non-political and Foreign Service officers all testified that the appearance of conflict of interest with Hunter Biden going to Ukraine and taking a job at Burisma was there. Okay. And so if the entire State Department knew, and they report to Congress, which they do, and they report, you know, why didn't, the Republicans in the House invested Hillary Clinton, 8 ways to Sunday, all day, every day. Darrell Issa investigated Eric Holder's Fast and Furious all day, every day. But for some reason, they didn't think that there was any there with Hunter Biden in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. Right? Only until Joe Biden announced he was running did it become a corruption issue for Donald Trump. He released hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to Ukraine in 2017 and 18, Trump did. But now all of a sudden he needs, an investigation into Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and he needs an investigation into CrowdStrike all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah. You know, I really think I don't know if you could just keep it simple or something, but if I could just have, these guys, like Swalwell was really good last night. But if they could just say very simply, because they keep saying you did nothing wrong. If they could just say, well, Mueller said that he could be indicted if he was not president, and Taylor said he could be court-martialed on the field of battle. You know, what's wrong with just saying that over and over again, you know?
Well, all you need to say over and over again is he abused his power, which is what they're saying over and over again. Now, I will agree with the previous caller that, the words that Democrats use, that's why I like David Cicilline's little 16-second clip, because he said the moment is now and we will decide whether or not we are a democracy or a dictatorship. That is where we are. That is how simple it is. Whether or not the party of Trump is going to give all the power of Congress and all the power of the judicial branch to the president of the United States.
Well, it's just like me trying to talk to my wife, it just, you can't really make any sense, so you just keep talking past one another and nothing ever gets done. And you're right that we don't have a chance,
Well, we do have a chance. Don't say we don't. We do. And if people started calling, some of the senators who are leaving, some of the senators like Mike Enzi in Wyoming, he's going. Senator Burr, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee from North Carolina, he's going. He's retiring. Lamar Alexander from Tennessee, he's retiring. You got some people there that really need a phone call. And there are a lot of senators from swingy states like Iowa, Joni Ernst, Mitt Romney in Utah, where Trump is not very popular, Susan Collins of Maine, which is kind of a leaning Democratic state. You got plenty of phone calls. You got plenty of, ways to let your senators know that we get what's going on here. The Congress is literally giving the Enabling Act treatment that Germany gave, which I think is a better example than Russia. Nobody understands Russia. Nobody does. Everybody understands pre-World War II Germany. Everybody. And that is really what's happening here. The Congress, just like the Reichstag, is giving their power to Donald Trump. Not to the party. Okay, not to the party. There is no party. It's to this man. This cult of personality man. Diane in Florida.
Hi, Randy. Nice to talk to you. Long time.
Hi.
So I just want to say, the Democrats are not underscoring. Each time Republicans say, Obama didn't give them javelins, but Trump gave them javelins. What they need to say is, Obama didn't give them javelins in 2016 because they didn't meet the benchmarks for javelins in 2016. But they met the benchmarks in 2017, and they met it again in 2018, and they met it again in 2019. So Obama didn't want to give them javelins in 2016 because they were still a corrupt prosecutor.
Well, there's other two reasons also. He didn't want to give them javelins because they weren't trained to use them.
Exactly.
Which is what Obama provided them with, is the training to use them prior to giving it to them. And if people don't get that, well, remember, we sold the Saudis weapons, and the Saudis were here in Pensacola for 3 years. Right, training to use the equipment we sold. Okay, you don't just give the equipment and just assume that, oh, they'll figure out how to use it. That's ridiculous. That is just stupid. And the other reason, let me finish. The other reason, this is important. The other reason why Obama did not give javelins is because he did not want to escalate with Russia. He thought if he put javelins, lethal weaponry in Ukraine, that Russia would escalate, as they did. Okay? Now, here's another thing people need to know. The javelins are not allowed to be used in Ukraine. What? Yes. See, this is another little thing that nobody talks about. The terms of the sale of the javelins after it happened, the terms of the sale require that those anti-tank javelin missile systems be stored in western Ukraine, far, far, far from the front lines, because they still have a fear, that same fear, which is why I wanted to get this out, that if Ukraine started to deploy the Javelin missile system in the eastern part where Russian separatists are fighting Ukrainians, Russia will escalate. It's still a concern, and that's why they can't be used.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The justification is that the Obama administration only provided blankets, so the Ukrainians should be grateful, even after being shaken down, that the Trump administration provided more. But the truth, Ms. Cooper, is that under the Obama administration and the European Reassurance Initiative, $175 million were provided from U.S. taxpayer dollars to the Ukrainians. Is that right?
Billion.
Sir, I don't have that figure. The figure that we typically use is to say we've provided $1.6 billion to date. But I don't have the breakdown in front of me.
And the Obama administration also trained 5 military battalions of the Ukrainians. Is that correct?
Again, I don't have the figures in front of me, but yes, the training program began in the Obama administration, and we did train many forces.
And under the Obama administration founded Ukrainian Security Assistance Initiative, provided to the Ukrainians were armored Humvees, tactical drones, night vision devices, armored vests, and medical equipment. Is that correct?
These all sound like pieces of equipment that were provided in the Obama administration, to my recollection.
You'd agree that's a lot more than blankets, right?
Yes, sir.
So to the previous caller, there are many reasons that go into a decision, okay? Decision to give lethal weaponry to another country that isn't a NATO ally, right? Okay, so one of the things were exactly what she said on the phone call, is that Ukraine had not met the anti-corruption benchmarks yet. Also, it was a big, big issue for the Obama administration whether or not to give the Javelin missiles to Ukraine because, A, they didn't have training in that particular anti-missile system, anti-tank. It's actually an anti-tank missile system. And also, he was afraid that that would escalate Russia's activities and that they would become even more brutal and they would kill faster and more Ukrainians in the Donbas region, because Crimea had already been annexed. And so we gave them money to train them on the Javelin anti-tank missile system, right? And also set out some anti-corruption protocols that the Ukrainians had to meet in order for them to qualify for military assistance with lethal weapons. Now, you got to remember that the Trump campaign, not the presidency, the Trump campaign as led by Paul Manafort, the lobbyist for Viktor Yanukovych, the Putin puppet in Ukraine at that time, they changed the Republican Party's platform to only give blankets to Ukraine, right? They took out the provision that said that they would supply. The Republican Party was for supplying Ukraine with lethal weaponry. They literally changed that platform, and that was before the counterintelligence investigation was kicked off in July, on the last day of July, July 31st, 2016, into Russia and Russia's hacking, right? Everybody had seen that, and everybody was like, what is going on? They're meeting in Trump Tower, and they're changing the platform, and Paul Manafort, everybody knew he was a lobbyist for a brutal dictator in Ukraine that was literally overthrown by the people of Ukraine. 100 people died in those Maidan protests, and since then, the annexation of Crimea, you had 10,000 dead at that time, right? So it was really weird that they were changing the platform and all this. But you have to remember, Donald Trump is such a liar that whatever he says, it's absolutely the opposite of what he's doing. So when he was up there saying, drain the swamp, who did he put in charge of who was the Secretary of Defense? Okay, McMaster left, right? So you had Pat Shanahan. Pat Shanahan was the Boeing executive. And, I don't know if he wanted them to sell or not to sell, but I mean, he certainly. Now we have Esper. Esper is a Raytheon executive, and the Javelins are a Raytheon missile system. So, of course, all of a sudden, listen, he's not draining the swamp. Everybody's a lobbyist. Even the DNI, Dan Coates, was a former lobbyist. Our Health and Human Secretary, Mr. Azar, is a pharmaceutical, executive. He represented he worked for Big Pharma. The EPA chair was Mr. Wheeler, who was a coal industry lobbyist. I mean, the whole thing is ate up with lobbyists. This man has hired a lobbyist for every single position in his government. Boeing is the second largest military contractor in the world, and that's who he picked for DOD. And then Shanahan was so, obviously, understood as being, a Boeing official that he had to withdraw from consideration. This is how he got Esper. And Esper was a longtime employee of Raytheon, the third largest military contractor, who, by the way, makes the Javelin. But when Trump was running, he was anti-lethal weapons. All of a sudden, we get the Raytheon guy, and now we're for lethal. Please. Janine in Hawaii.
Hey, Randy.
Hi, Janine.
Did you see the House, the ranking minority member just walked out?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I have the TV on, but I'm not looking at it. It's over there.
Less than 5 minutes ago, he walked out. He was yelling and screaming and walked out.
Doug Collins?
Yes, him. Yeah, he got himself all upset and walked out.
He's a lunatic. And so is Jordan, and so is Getz. I mean, of all of those people, they are the craziest of the crazy. They are literally fascists. They are literally willing to throw in with Trump in such a big way that they would give up their power and give it to him. That's what they're doing.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. It's like we have to readjust our thinking on this whole thing because Trump is a malignant narcissist. And that's what cult leaders are. And he is what you're calling him Cult 45. That is so right on. That is what it's become. We now have the largest cult in America. My sister even became one. She went from a left-wing, totally liberal progressive like me, and she is now a part of this QAnon nutcase.
No,
so
really?
I know all of it. For real.
How
did
that happen?
And I've been thinking about it since the 2 years since it's happened, and I think it's because of conspiracy theories. I've been prone to plenty of conspiracy theories throughout my life, but now at this point, I've pretty much given them all up because they all just seem like Trump has blown it all out of the water. The deep state, I used to believe a little bit in the deep state, perhaps, maybe. No way the deep state would let Trump in there at all. I no longer believe in the deep state at all.
I'm the deep state. You're the deep state. The people are the deep state. We're the ones that agitate in a fashion that says, don't lie to me, don't lie us into war. All the Afghan papers are out. That was a complete and utter lie. Iraq was a complete and utter lie. We're the deep state. We're the ones that try to expose all of the in chaos we can steal activity. But if there is a deep state, Trump has hired every last one of them.
Well, these malignant narcissists, I was in a forced relationship with one for years, so I had to study it, and I had to wind up using his own tactics to get out of it. So I know a lot about it personally, and Trump is every single bit of a malignant narcissist. George Conway is right on. They use these tactics that we regular people don't even think about. When they walk into a room, they have preconceived notions completely of how they are going to use every single person in that room, whether they're going to, how they're going to make them think, how they're going to make them react. They've got this all planned out before they even walk into a room. When they're arguing with you, they throw so much stuff at you at once. It's like being in the middle of a tornado where you're just getting hit left and right, and you can't keep up. They throw 5 lies at you in 5 seconds, and you're standing there as a normal person trying to rebut each lie intellectually and honestly. And while you're trying to do that, they've thrown 10 more lies at you in the next 10 seconds, and you can't keep up. And it leaves you confused, drained, utterly exhausted. I went through this for years myself. Now I've been looking up videos from psychiatrists on YouTube about narcissists, and it's a nightmare. It's not.
You want to read a really, really, really good book? It's very simple, but it addresses this really well. It's called Help. I'm in Love with a Narcissist. It's the most amazing book I ever.
I think I did read that one years ago, and that's how it helped me get out of that relationship.
Yeah.
But now it's like this is happening to the whole country. This is not individuals, but it's all the same things. And this derives from Roy Cohn and all the tactics that Roy Cohn has taught. You just yell and repeat and threaten and humiliate and deride and ridicule. We have to become more like them. When they go low, we can't go high. They don't respect us for going high. They don't respect us.
Well, going high means looking to the law and using the law to check and balance criminal behavior. So I have complete faith in going high. You know,
we need to fight them, and you're the fighter we need, Randy. We need to fight them just like you did.
I know, but I'm not going to, call people stupid or... But I will say that, cults are cults for a reason, and they always revolve around a personality, like a Jim Jones or Adolf or the La-Ti-Da people. Remember that? Heaven's Gate? People will sacrifice themselves.